we've got Beasty QT, a familiar side for the Age of Empires 4 fans, going up against NWG Warrior. I'm looking into this Warrior guy now because I think
194. You're
194. Okay, because this is a round of one. We're in the second round. Yeah, second round 128. Because I think Beasty got a bye because he was fairly high ranked. There wasn't someone waiting for him. So we're gonna get a real draft now, folks. It's not just gonna be a one and done. You're gonna have to prove yourself here. I'm trying to think what Beasty was practicing the most recently. I feel like he was resonating with the Egyptians. I know you've been watching some of his streams as well, Winston. It seemed like
What?
that's his most played.
Yeah,
It's
Yeah.
oh yeah, I'm sorry. It's just funny you say that because the recent like dozen games that Beastie played, none of those were with Egyptians.
Okay, maybe he switched it up. A few days ago, I know he was practicing with the Egyptians, so I'd imagine Greek has to be in there just because I think a lot of players have gone into this anticipating Greek is going to be powerful, and we have to think about the dynamics there, right? Winston is like, I'd say looking at the civs that got nerfed the most, it definitely feels like a hammer was taken to a lot of the Greeks' early builds with the recent patch.
Yeah, definitely targeting a bit that Greek classical, which often did quite a lot of damage. Just super flexible and a lot of options. So kind of toning those down a bit. But we'll see. Here we're playing a best of 3, right? So the Civ draft gonna be relevant, or the God draft, should I say? Oh, that's gonna have to get used to that. The God
It's Civ
draft.
and God,
gonna be-
right? It's kind of weird
yeah,
in that
it-
way.
You
the
can just
faction-
call it faction, okay? You gotta be
I'm
neutral.
gonna say God draft. That sounds like someone with a complex. I don't know.
I mean, it sounds like a compliment to players. I do love the fact that we give them 4 picks as well. Like, I'm always a big fan of this. I think it's something that, EGC learned with Age of Empires 4 over time. Is in the early days, we'd have formats where you'd use every civ. And it just felt like in the second half of the series, things were defeatist, right? Later, you could see who was clearly going to win. Giving 1 or 2 extra picks adds a bit of spice, a bit of variety, so you don't feel completely counterpicked.
The way I would like to approach this is the conversation that was very intense when AoE 4 was released back then. I think a lot of people at EGCTV remember that. A lot of people that came into AoE 4 said, wait, why cannot I just play the same civilization that I've been playing all day, all night? I just want to be like the best with it. After all, for AOM here, Red Bull decided to have the rules such that you do have to swap your gods, and I actually like this a lot because one thing to highlight is that this is still a new release game, and I don't like to kind of just cry for something being broken, so to say. I think that's a very bad narrative. But at the same time, when you look at certain things, maybe indeed something is just like a lot more powerful than some of the other features. And in a way, I think having to play a variety of gods means 2 things. A, you cannot one-trick pony your way through. And let's not forget, this is a big event. So, like, and it's single elimination. And second, it also incentivizes players to, like, come up with new strategies and innovative ways and be a little bit smarter about their god picks, subject to what maps they're playing. And I feel like, and this is one of the things, I'm a big enthusiast of this, I think it adds an extra layer of tactics and strategy. It's not just about how you use a given god, it's a matter of how you distribute your gods between specific maps and maybe even, hiding a god for future series that might be more important. Those kinds of things add another layer of uncertainty and another layer of intrigue into these series, I feel.
I think it also fits the mantra, kind of the identity of Age of as a series, right, Winston? Like, it's always been about this idea of civ diversity. We've seen it in a lot of different games in the genre. You're expected, it's anticipated that you're going to be able to play multiple civs, multiple factions to figure out the nuances. And I guess also on a developer side, it's quite nice because it means, in a weird way, you guarantee you're getting all the data you need to balance all the civs appropriately.
Well, we'll see how that goes. I think with regards to the god drafting, I find it interesting because, like, kind of historically, like, games like both Age of Mythology and Age of Empires 3, like the legacy versions, right? In those, it was much more common to have, like, sort of a main god, right? To just have one main faction, maybe like a class, or just one god in particular that you only played or mostly played. So surprised to see if that really diverges here. Like, obviously a lot of the best players can play just about anything with time, but especially early on in these days where the game is still fresh for many players, I'd be surprised to see if there's people really competent with every build order for every civ, right? Like, I think that's just going to be quite some time, especially with regards to matchups. The timings can be hard to learn, and a lot of them are very similar to what used to exist in Legacy, but we have a lot of players here that aren't maybe as familiar with Legacy as some of the other ones, right? So being comfortable in these timings and these matchups, it's going to be hard. I think we'll have a lot of players really good with their first couple gods, really have a build order down, but knowing the nuance of how that build order matches up against what the opponent is doing, that's like
Yeah.
a lifetime of experience needed to really know this game, the real depth and nitty gritty detail of it.
Yeah,
And
I think
it's very different in a competitive setting as well, right? It's not just that you got to play your number 6 god, dare I say, in the rank ladder on a map that you're familiar with. Sometimes you might be put against tougher opponents. Even you're the underdog, and you have to play a god that you're not so comfortable with, maybe on a map that you haven't had a lot of time to practice. And to be fair, when you look at the whole setup, though, I really feel like this allows the tournament to truly pick the player that is the most competent in AOM as a whole game.
Yeah, I think it's the case of you'll always have your favorites, right? So,
Mhm.
like to me, I think Magic, I think Egypt straight away, right? Like, I mean, you can't not think Mr. Greek. It just, I mean, it's in his blood, it's in the game. But within that, it's that whole idea of robustness. I think something that inherently comes out of doing that was seen instead of having a situation where you can just main the same thing over and over again. And this comes from someone who has enjoyed plenty of StarCraft, plenty of Stormgate, is when you have that element of, yeah, you can just main that Civ. If the meta favors you, if it is, a Zerg meta or it is a Celestial meta, right? Or like if we were in this game, if it was a Norse meta, there's going to be some players that are de-incentivized or they're depowered, right? Like for example, Magic being an Egypt guy, if it's all about Norse, what does he do there? He's always at a disadvantage. So I kind of like these systems because then from a development perspective, it screws you over less as a dev when you want to make drastic balancing decisions that might completely flip the table. Whereas when you build an esports scene and people are, spending hundreds of thousands of dollars running these tournaments, and all of a sudden you've dedicated 5 years of your life to be in the $1 million tournament, but your faction is the worst faction, right? Like you as a player feel like you've just been scammed. And then on the dev side, the devs then don't want to change anything because they know they're ruining someone's livelihood, right? So I like that kind of freedom that it gives everyone in the process.
Looks like we don't have a draft just yet. The players are
We're
getting
underway.
ready. Well, at least
it's
got
moving.
draft.
They were
Okay,
slow on the
there
maps.
we go.
We have got some maps up
Yeah.
though. Mirage is going to be an interesting one. I haven't seen too much of this one so far, Winston.
It's
I-
got the fish in the back, which is really safe. It kind of accelerates things. It's really hard to put pressure on the opponent's fish because the fish spawn like behind your base. A lot of the time, you can kind of spawn a little bit to the sides, if I recall. I think this is a map added. I think this is one of like the more Voobly era maps, not one of the classic ESO maps, right? So this was been a fun one. I've played it a few times. It's quite good, but it is wacky a bit because you have that water build and the fish are pretty far, so that kind of balances it a bit, making the income pretty mild. But we're probably going to see both players go for it and have that safe food income. So one of those big things is going to be to see if players can really like kind of like Four Lakes, if you're familiar with that map in any of the other Age games. Just try and sneak those vills around for those dock. That dock aggression can be good, but again, it's kind of tricky. The dock can get taken out so easily by land units. So we'll see how this goes. And wow, Beasty straight
Whoa.
into Egypt versus NWG Warrior straight into Norse. Gotta love the commitment.
I love that. I was like, I just looked at NWG Warrior's history, and he was like, Odin, 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 Odin. And occasionally he mixes in a Poseidon, which is still available to him. But Beasty did his homework. He checked out those games and said, oh yeah, this guy is an Odin enjoyer. But still, there's going to be Loki. There's going to be Thor for NWG Warrior. Whereas Beasty is just going super heavy on the Egyptians. I'm curious about the choice for Warriors pick to ban Poseidon from Beasty, though, because I mean, we're seeing a pattern here with the picks for Beastie so far. So I'm genuinely curious what the mindset was for Warrior to take away Poseidon.
So I just want to clarify. What is the name of the Lord of the Sea?
It's Poseidon.
All right, Mr. Syrup, we're gonna need you in here again. You gotta give us another time break. Come in, come on.
What?
Poseidon.
In what language?
Every language.
No, there's no way.
That is the Greek god. It's Poseidon. I love this. I just love doing this for Lidicor. It's just brilliant. It's we prepped him on other ones. Like it's like it's hoplite. We're gonna be very Latin
No,
today.
we talked about this, KP. Hoplites is the Latin version of the Greek, okay?
Yeah,
And I stand by that.
and I confirmed with a Greek that I think this was in my chat when I was asking about it. It's like hoplite is better than hoplites. So I'm Mr. Approved, mate, and that's all I need in life in Age of Mythology. But no, we're looking at the rounding out of the draft here, and it looks like Beastie is going to split it between Egyptians and Greeks. So no Ra coming out, which I don't know. Is that surprising at this point, Winston? Ra did just receive some buffs, I think, around the Monument Empowering. It got increased from 60 to 70%.
Yeah, but that's 60 to 70% of the Pharaoh empowerment of it. So it's like a quite marginal buff. And if you look at Ra's win rates across the board, I think it'd be really tough to justify like banking a tournament life on it, right? Which a lot of these games, we're not in like some big group stage where exploration is acceptable, right? Like if you want to make it to the tournament, you need to pick what is best. And Set and Isis are slapping hard.
And then on the other side, of course, we do have that Norse representation, which is powerful. How have we been feeling about like 4 recently? I think most people have been going Odin, right? Like, out of the Norse gods, it seems to be the most popular by far. I know Loki has some interesting aggressive tones. I'm wondering, considering Warrior loves Norse so much, is he willing to gamble on a little bit of Freya?
Maybe it crossed my mind, but we're going to have an Atlantean showing over here. We're going to have Gaia. I was actually going to bring up the very thing. Looks like the final pick, the final god pick, is not there for Warrior yet. But I was thinking about it. Like, listen, if you're a big Norse enjoyer, you might as well go for Freyr. But I want to go back to a conversation topic here because I feel offended. I just did the Google Translate Greek pronunciation for Poseidon, and it's Poseidon in Greek.
Let me just double check this because I know how insecure you are about these things, so I need to like make sure. I've got my favorite pronunciation guy who pronounced everything in French.
Pronunciation?
Pronunciation, yep.
Okay, I see. I see what's going on here.
How's that? Poseidon. So actually, that wasn't what you said at all.
Oh,
Poseidon is not what you said at all.
Of course, if you have Marine Lord pronouncing it for you, it's gonna be mispronounced. But
No.
I mean,
This
that's
is
not
a
the
different
standard.
one. This is a different one. This person's Greek. Poseidon is what they just got out of my Google search. So we can keep digging that hole if you want. We'll be so deep we might be able to turn up on Boyd's stream at this rate, or we can focus on what's ahead of us, which is going to be an interesting one in Isis versus Loki. Winston, correct me if I'm wrong, but this feels. Isis, I'd say, is a bit more defensive for the Egyptians, right? So are we expecting Warrior to be the attacker here?
Probably. I'm not quite sure how this will play out precisely. I think, with Loki, you always have to be scared of the Bragi. Like the heroic timing with Loki, and it's so disgustingly strong. Flaming weapons is just like kind of a game end button if you have the right position for it. Mix in a couple battle boars. Life is just good for the Norse when you have that as an option, and that's one of the reasons why Loki is so favored. It's such a potent and powerful strategy. We'll see how this plans. I'm not going to call it here. I think it's going to come down to player play. We've got the water in the mix as well, so it's not even like a standard land map per se. So I think a lot of it's going to come down to stuff like that, and less so, whose god is better.
I mean, maybe we're thinking playstyle as well. Like historically, Beastie has been known to be, I'd say, a bit more of a defensive player. Feels comfortable
Mhm.
there, Lidicor. And I think, out of all the civs, if I had to choose one that kind of feels like a bit close to your SimCity type civ, one that can go 2TC, bolster up, play a bit later, Egypt has, for a lot of players, kind of historically ticked that box, right?
Exactly. Like when you just look at Egyptians, especially, I don't know how much AOM Beastie played back in the past. Maybe this is his first ride with the game. I genuinely do not know. But when you get into the game immediately and you're just trying to digest all this information, the first thing that really pops to the Egyptians is that indeed they are more on this eco-focused and macro side of things. And that is what plays into Beastie's playstyle. I absolutely love how the obelisks could be used for Beastie's defensive style, just to eliminate god powers. And we've seen this in AoE 4 as well from him as well. Oftentimes he's back against the wall. it looks like game is over, and then he makes a miraculous hold happen and just comes back into it. And I feel like if you want to pick one pantheon that this works exceptionally well with, I feel like that's the Egyptians.
Another thing I'm really excited for here, Winston, is for all the Age of Empires 4 people watching. Fishing is going to feel very different on this map, not just because it's limited on the back, but I got to give it to them. I think I prefer Mythology's fishing system, where it's not just something you can flood and exploit like we're used to seeing in 4.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly positives and negatives, I think, right? Like, there's a limitation to the income, and it also is much lower, especially if you compare it to with upgrades in AoE4. But it can have its positives and negatives. Sometimes you even see players deleting fishing ships late game just because you kind of got the tempo out of it, and you just don't want the pop weight like there. It just be better in other ways. But I mean, just thinking about how this game is going to play out. You know, ISIS is super reliant on that second gold position in order to play like a longer heroic age. And on this map, the golds can spawn like pretty unforgiving, right? Because there's no back, right? Because your back is taken by water. So your golds are kind of like in a ring in front of you. And I feel like it could be really easy for Beasty to get zoned off of gold if he doesn't make a play for that second gold early and have it work, right?
Yeah. Well, one thing to think about here is with limited time, there's only so much you can learn. NWG Warrior, we're not sure how much he's been playing of Age of Myth historically. Beasty is also aware of that being a potential weak point, but turns out we're going to have to wait 3 more minutes before we find out if that is a true weak point. We've got a little bit more time to talk about the wider draft. I know, we had a quick remake here. So, with that in mind, we can dig a little bit deeper into the idea that we have got these aggro civs coming out for Warrior, but when it comes to Gaia Litter, I'd say this is more of a greedy kind of, not greedy, but eco and more defensive type Atlantean pick. So we might actually have that trade-off, especially when you consider BC has Set, which is considered to be the most aggressive Egyptian option you can have.
Yeah, I'm still missing that one final pick.
I know. No, I don't think we're getting it, mate. I think we're just being teased.
Production. Well, what's up with that? Let me see if I can dig it up from
okay,
the depths
so we're
of
getting
the
confirmation.
internet.
It was Freer. Dude, I was right. Look at that. I knew he'd go for it.
Okay. I feel like we're seeing a pattern here, though, KP. Right? It's you take away my Odin, but you cannot take away all the other Norse gods. I have a gut feeling that having conversations about Gaia is something we need to be cautious about because it's very possible that we're not going to see any Gaia here.
All right, I just got confirmation in. It is finally time. We're going to find out if Beasty has learned enough Age of Mythology. If he's going to be a true slayer as he gets into his real first competition here. Single elimination, a best of 3 up against NWG Warrior.
In we go to game number 1 here, Beasty versus Warrior. Beasty currently ranks 62 on the ladder, NWG Warrior at the 192, and we're kicking this series off on a Mirage. Beasty with the color blue, and on the other side, Warrior with the color red. Winston, I'm curious about your POV on this matchup in particular, especially because when you look at the draft from Warrior, it is very clear that he just wanted to go all in Norse. His favorite one is Odin. That was taken away from him. But he's got Loki, he's got Thor, and he's got Freyr. He's opening the series with Loki here.
I mean, I think it's just going to be about pressure. Loki is super solid with a timing attack, right? You try to apply pressure, constrict your opponent, and then you go in for a big push with flaming weapons. That is like kind of the bread and butter. You also have options late game, right? We've seen in games recently Rag being used quite effectively by a lot of players. So we'll see if that's going to be kind of a capstone in this game, maybe, if BC's prepped for that late game. I'm not quite sure.
Ooh, that's a nice obelisk. Like, Beasty's already getting some... actually, never mind. I'm getting confused over here because of the top bar. That's so annoying, right? When the top bar has blue on the left and red on the right, and then you look at the minimap and you get confused. Nevertheless, Beasty's definitely setting up a couple of obelisks out there. Anyway, let's get back to your point on that. I got confused here.
Oh, no, nothing. So we'll see what comes into play here, right? Not playing Thor or Odin here. Probably more comfortable with Odin. I didn't check. Did we check Warrior's match history? Has he played like a lot of Odin mostly? Is that what you
Odin,
said?
Odin, and Poseidon or Poseidon or whatever you want to call it, depending on the TTS
Mhm.
bot that KP uses to pronounce it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good to know. Good to know.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw that in the pick here, so we'll see how Warrior plays this. Gonna be a bit of a slower start, but that'll accelerate rather quickly once players get into the classical age. I wonder if this is maybe just an FH from both players here. I'm not really sure what the map would really look like. This isn't one that's been on the ladder, so I don't think we've seen a lot of games on Mirage just in general, right? So curious to see how exactly this will pan out. We can see the first monument coming down finally for Beasty. So it was a pretty delayed monument in the build order.
And it's a Heimdall age up here for Warrior to start with. On the other side, Beasty is now going up as well. How do you feel about this? It is Heimdall versus Bast. I don't know.
Bast is pretty sick. So what ISIS likes to set up for, and this is a classic legacy strategy. If you're not familiar, it's Bast into Nephis, right? And you have Ancestors Eclipse. It's like one of the classic god combinations because you get Eclipse, you get Ancestors, they synergize together, and it's just really solid. You build a couple extra myth units, you go for a push, and it's really solid timing. Now, a lot of Herseers on the field from Loki, which is what Loki often wants to do because they're incentivized to with their bonuses, means that it can kind of deal with the Ancestors Eclipse in isolation, right? So we'll see how this pans out. Beasty getting a nice timing on Flood of the Nile. This gives you essentially 2 free vills on food. On water maps, it's going to be less relevant, I think, but you know, it's still going to be very useful and helpful here.
Early Flood of the Nile coming in here for the extra food income, and again, we're looking at this setup that we talked about for Beasty right off the get-go. Sphinx has to just stand and fight potentially here. This is not a good fight you feel for the Sphinx here, right up against the hero, but looks like Beasty's gonna be able to pull it away. A lot of damage taken though.
It's not too bad. A lot of times you want to do stuff like this because you're trading HP early and you have priests and Ferris to heal.
True.
So you can just run back and you'll full heal that guy up and he'll be relevant again. And it's going to be a bit more difficult because we did see the Heimdall pick. Heimdall is just aggressive all-in push. That ability, Undermine, can just take out towers. It one-shots towers, essentially, right? So, and you kind of like angle it. So there might be a position here where you can get 2 towers down, maybe on the right side here, or maybe you just push through on the gold, try and pressure the temple. But we'll see though. So definitely not looking for a long game here is Warrior, who's going all out aggro. That's generally what Heimdall indicates. Great
Well,
Hulk.
that's an age up. And there is your age up with Nephthys, as you called it. The top UI is still a little confusing to me. It's like I always have to like double check what's going on, especially because something is odd. I'm just now realizing that Nephthys age up is something that belongs to Beasty on the right, but the right side of the UI is supposed to correspond to Warrior here. That's what got me confused in this.
I think you are confused because we do see the Herseer looping around the back now, and this is something you can do on these maps. Is if there's a bit of a gap between the tower placements, sometimes you can pressure the docks. But I think Beasty has his dock under the tower nicely. Egypt obviously getting the tower upgrades for free gives them a nice defensive boost against these early classical pressure plays. And then we see just cows being picked up. This is where generally, oh, we're getting the heroic age as well.
No, I'm sorry, I was right. Beasty up to classical or up to heroic, and the UI shows his age up on the right side when the top bars have Warrior on the right side. That's the thing. You look at the left side as well. All these Nordic units, now Njord coming up as well. Those are shown on the left side, but the bars at the top correspond to Beasty being blue. That's the confusing thing in this.
Yeah, and this is going to be an interesting fight here. Beasty's coming out for a second. He's going to be placing his Migdal on this gold. Actually going for the TC first, but there's Heimdall on the field. This TC could just get denied by the Undermine really, really quickly. The Sphinx going to try and take a fight. The poison comes out. The Scorpion Man going to be trying to take an engagement against these Hearths here. The Priest in the back, though, raining down that damage. Good micro for Beasty, keeping these alive. Going to be able to get these healed up in the back of this. What a crazy play there. The Heroic not in time for Warrior. Oh,
He's going to have to pull away, and now production buildings are exposed over here. Beasty coming in with that quick expand. Second DC going up. But at the same time, now it's heroic for both these players, and numbers are just looking so much better over here for Warrior.
Walking Woods of the Mountain Giant. A lot of damage is going to be dealt. Ancestors Eclipse comes out. There's plenty of Hearths here to deal with this. It's going to be really tricky for Beasty, I think. He's going to have to back off for the time being as Warrior, but I think this might be okay for Warrior. He's just going to be going in, though. Oh, all the mid-unit is just going in alone against the Priest. The Hearths here just running away.
Yeah.
Okay, leaving the Walking Woods to die like that is really tricky. This was a misclick, maybe? The Hearths here just aren't there.
Yeah, this is so weird. He dove in with the trees. He even called down Undermine, but the Hearths just didn't commit to this, and now he's sending them in one by one. The army feels a little disconnected here, and Beasty's looking to pounce on this. He's chipping away at small groups of units, and he's going to be able to hold this.
Yeah, and a couple of Jarls even trying to come out here, so there's interesting approach on Loki here. The Hearths count just was not high enough for him to take that engagement. And that's kind of what I mean about, like, when players are playing these maps that are less common in the rank ladder, and they're playing these matchups that, you know, the exact mapping and exactly how many units you have or need to take a fight isn't well known to players still. We're going to be seeing fights like this, I think, throughout the tournament, where players are just going to be taking engagements that maybe they should, maybe they shouldn't. It's even hard for me to cast, right? Because, you know, how do you know exactly what's going to happen when the game is so fresh and new? But we'll see. That game, this went really well for Beasty, though. Just make no mistake.
Yes.
The Migdal is up, the TC is up, the income is there. That second gold that we talked about before the game is solidified, and that will give Beasty a lot of options now.
Yeah, that second DC is coming in super handy over here for him. And it looks like I was just trying to get some confirmations with production on the top bars.
Another TC.
Yep, he's expanding very aggressively, and this is kind of what you see from Beasty. He is this kind of macro player, just expand and build up and just progressively ground you down in the late game. And I want to say that the thing that swapped is the actual color bars at the very top. Because now Beasty should have that eco advantage just being on multiple town centers compared to just one.
Yes.
So it's the power balance bars that are kind of messed up. Anyway, Hillfort now coming in here has to protect this gold mine. This is, as you highlighted, it's a life and death. And Hillfort should be able to complete in time. God powers available, but not a lot of favors on either side right now. They just used up most of their favors for that one critical engagement.
Yeah, interesting choice by Warrior here. He's been queuing up these Einhar, which is a really interesting choice. So the myth unit right on the center of the screen here. He's got 4 of them with the double axes, and it's an interesting choice to queue up a lot of those. It is tricky to use a lot of them. So the Harry, sorry, I think their name has changed a bit. They have this ability where they kind of toot their horn and everybody around them gets sped up. I found that when you have multiple of them, it's actually really tricky because you don't want to layer. You don't want them all casting at the same time, which is what they'll do naturally. So what I find is you can't auto queue that one if you have multiple. So you un-auto queue them, and then you have to sort of toggle and cycle through to keep that buff up. It's really good on the Hearths here because it lets them chase the units they're trying to kill. And we're going to see a bit of an engagement here maybe, but I don't think Warrior can take this under the TC. Those Chariot Archers are just going to demolish
a lot of priests as well on the back line here for Beast. He does have this strong forward fortified position. He's even coming in with a siege tower here. Looks like he's done playing around. He wants to start doing some damage here. And with the mobility of those Chariot Archers, he could do a lot. Like, he has this run-by potential and just start picking off eco. He's been scaling his eco very rapidly here when you just look at the top bar. 64 versus 42.
Yeah, things are looking good for him with that third TC locked down, and now Then adding in some siege to try and pressure the front here. The Hersier is trying to take an engagement, but I don't know if it's going to work. It looks like Beasty has ballistics. The priests are, though, awkwardly kind of in the front here, and we're going to see straight for the dive. This is a full commit into a hard counter, essentially. The priest taking up the trees, taking up the Einhari. We're not seeing them toot that horn, so the Hersier really catching up faster.
Gotta love the choke point fight, though. So many of the Hersier got caught by the Chariot Archers in that narrow choke. Beasty is slowly getting ground down over here. Chariot Archers standing their ground, though. And it should be enough for Beasty to hold this. The numbers are just not there for Warrior. He is getting pushed back. He's getting cleaned up.
Yeah, that fight was ill-advised based on the outcome, right? And it looks like a lot of the units are kind of in the back here still, but we'll see how this goes. The siege tower coming forward once again. Top it goes. So some of these forward production buildings going to take some damage.
It's not just going to be damage, it's going to be complete destruction. Here's second siege tower as well, and Beasty with the Chariot micro, he's got StarCraft background. He's got a really good micro skill as well. So microing these Chariot Archers just fits the bill so well for him. And he's able to pick off so many of these units without taking virtually any damage.
Yeah, the priests as well, just raining down their damage. You can see whenever they're hitting a myth unit, you can very clearly tell because their little rock that they throw glows gold, indicating that divine damage. Or I guess that's like a bright white. And you can just see the focus fire there from Beasty in real time. You can see that excellent micro, and it's just not even going to get the light of day here. Warrior taken out quickly in game one. How will this series progress, Lidicor?
Interesting opening here for Beasty. I feel like for a long time he was on the more passive side of things and more an eco-focused expansion, and I feel like we gotta go back to that one decisive fight mid-game. Both players using up essentially all their favors, but Warrior, he had that moment where his army felt a little disconnected and he didn't just send in everybody. It was more of a trickle of like smaller groups of units. And when you look back at it, that kind of stalled out this push, and from that point onwards, it was just a rapid escalation into a snowball from Beasty.
Yeah, I mean, Ancestors Eclipse is a really scary thing, and one thing you can do when your opponent casts it is just simply retreat, right? It's to run away, and it looked like that was kind of the idea. We saw the core unit that was going to be of value in that fight were going to be those Hersiers. They really do quite well against the Ancestor minions, right? But those sadly retreated back to the base or chased one. Maybe that was a Beasty thing. Maybe he ran minion deep into the base and a lot chased, and it just sort of fell apart. And then you have the sieging units, right? The Walking Woods and the Mountain Giant are going to be really good against buildings. They just bring a ton of crush. So when we talk about that timing, both Loki and Odin can do this. They bring that timing. They're just looking to take out the buildings while the rest of their army deals with the units. And it just didn't quite work out there for Warrior. I wonder if maybe that he could have had some better way to take that fight, but I'm not quite sure. It looked like maybe he's just outnumbered.
Well, that's a 1-0 for Beasty. He moves on to match point here. We don't have a map selection yet from Warrior, but he's the one that gets to pick what we're playing next, from what I heard. He still has 2 more Norse gods to work with, Thor or Freyr. I've been told by production to try and pronounce it appropriately because, when you have a Norwegian in the production end of things, he's going to be like, oh, it's Loki versus Loki and Thor versus Thor. And everybody is freaking out about pronunciations. But, you got to try to appease everybody. And thankfully, we don't have KP here, so you cannot complain about that right now.
We're free! Yeah, no, Lidicor, I agree. My pronunciation is going to be generally probably off a bit. I've been calling these things since I was a kid, right? Like the Gaia, Thor, Odin are simple, but yeah, Loki, I call him Loki. I don't know. It's very casual.
I think
on the DL,
I always thought it was Loki, from what I heard.
Wow.
But I loved your Jarl, which I would have thought is Jarl, at least in the English pronunciation.
Silent J's. Same with Njord.
Okay.
It's Jarl.
It's Jarl from what I hear from our resident
I said Jarl. I said Jarl.
Okay, good.
So I said.
It's funny because in the again, if you look at the US or English pronunciation, most people would go with Jarl.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting. What do you think about the next pick here? So Warrior probably going to go to the map he picked, right? Gold Rush? maybe
would
taking
presume so.
Thor, because you get a little bit of
I'm
security. Maybe is like the logic. I'm not quite sure
yeah.
what the
Uh,
plan would be there. It's a very all-in map on Gold Rush, and Thor can tend to
mm,
be a bit slower as they want to go for early boom.
you do have flaming weapons for Thor though. Once you get to heroic. And I'm wondering, like you kind of highlighted the
Oh,
significance
Lagoon.
of that or potential significance of that in the previous game. If he wants to try to leverage that, then he can only do that with Thor. Friar, well, actually, Friar, it's also an option. I don't know. One thing is sure, Gaia. I don't think we're going to see that here.
Mm, maybe with the changes, it could be good. Um, we'll see what Beastie ends up picking. Probably Set, right?
I'm thinking yes. We've actually seen some Greeks from him when you look at the ladder, but then again, you gotta be always a little cautious when it comes to interpreting ladder results. These
Mhm.
players, especially the ones that are seriously competing, have 7 accounts and their practice games are all on separate accounts. But we've seen some Hades from him. We've seen some Poseidon. We've seen some Zeus. So Beastie has kind of been splitting time mostly between Egyptians and Greeks. But I'm
Mhm.
thinking, especially given the success that he had with the Egyptians in the opener, I feel like he might just go and settle with Set here.
Mhm. Yeah, I think Set makes sense as well on Blue Lagoon. It's one of the maps where you have like a pretty good chance. There's a lot of like of the bigger hunt, like rhinos, and that's where Set does appreciate getting the big hunts in. So we'll see how that plays out. I bet it's going to be Set. Makes sense. It's logical on this map, but I mean, who knows? I think a lot of it at the end of the day is going to be up to player preference here more than it is like what's good on what map and maybe the details of the matchups. Again, we talked about this a bit, but like I don't think we're going to be seeing players really pick based on like the mind games. Oh, they're going to pick this, so I'm going to try and counter. Yeah, set Thor. We just go straight down the draft, right? They're just picking what they're comfortable with in these early rounds.
How do you feel about this? My first impression is that game number 1 went reasonably well for Beastie, and we are seeing the same, I guess, main god style setup, at least the same Pantheon setup. It's Egypt versus Norse, obviously different main gods to look at. Do you think this is a better matchup for Warrior versus the one that we've seen in the previous game?
No, I think set in the hands of someone who really knows what they're doing is maybe one of the best gods right now. Just there's different ways you can play it, and just priest siege is super strong right now. You have a lot of ways to apply pressure early game with set as well. So we'll see if that gets used, or you can just use your bonuses for pure economy, and that's really good. Just tons of flexibility, and I think if you have a player who understands these timings with set, I think Thor at the moment might just be falling a little short, but that's assuming like equal understanding, equal skill, right? All that stuff. And in these early rounds of the tournament, it's really going to come down to a couple of the details. Like, do you get to your second gold, right? Like, we're going to go probably more towards the fundamentals about Age of Mythology here rather than the nuance of the matchup.
Well, we just have 2 minutes left to go, but I gotta say, I absolutely love how everybody thinks that they know the proper pronunciation, and Twitch chat is just all about the pronunciation discussions. So, it's not just us butchering pronunciations, but I think we have a little time to potentially discuss some other matters related to the tournament while we're waiting for game number 2 to begin. So, 256 players to start with. We will go down to just 8, I do believe, today. We are finishing today with the round of 16s. From this point onwards, all the way to round of 16s, we have best of 3s. Round of 16s will be best of 5s. And tomorrow, we are going to have Boyd and Iron Maiden coming in to cast the very final stage of the online qualifiers. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're getting down to just 2 players here as well, right?
Just 2 players here
Yes. Yeah.
tomorrow.
Well, yeah, tomorrow. So
Yeah, I was gonna
by
say
the end of
today.
this
No,
weekend, we're just
I
gonna be
got like
down to 2.
350 right now. Yeah, I believe so. I think that's the plan.
Yep, we're just gonna go down to 2 players. Winner of the tournament is going to get $6,400. 3,500 approximately is going to be the award for the second placed player. But that's not all. If you finish, essentially the two highest placements just before elimination in the qualifiers, you're still going to be given $1,400. Top 8 gets $700, top 16 gets $300, and even top 32 gets $125. So, it's harsh. It's a single elimination format, but even if you get to the top 16 or so, you do get a decent chunk of the prize pool for yourself.
Yeah, quite spicy indeed. And of course, those finals are going to be live from the castle in Spain at El Reinado. That's going to be quite exciting. So looking forward to see you all there. Oh man, I'm just looking at the brackets right now, just trying to keep up with it all. You can go to start.gg, by the way, if you want to see these brackets, folks. And you can
Well,
kind of
we
follow
won't have
along.
time to discuss that though, because it looks like we
Ah.
do have a game here. We are heading into game number 2 between Beasty and Warrior. Warrior once again rank 192 on the ladder. Beasty about 62, but he's one of the most accomplished AoE 4 players ever out there. We do have him playing with the color blue. And on the other side, Warrior is playing as the color red. Warrior rocking Thor over here. And on the other side, it's set for Beastie. So once again, we have this Egyptian versus Norse setup that we had in the previous game.
Yep, and keep in mind on Blue Lagoon, the ponds don't have any fish in them. There are some plays where you can get some siege ships late game and try and take down key positions, especially if it's near a settlement. Maybe that can become viable. But generally, you don't see a ton of dock play on these sorts of maps, and you can see there a super good pickup there for Beastie. So what you're seeing is set with their priests, they can convert these wild animals, and this elephant just has so much food now. It is going to take quite a long time to convert this elephant. But once he gets that, he can walk it straight home for some food. He can use it as part of his army if you want. Sometimes players do that, sometimes they don't. It depends on the situation. But generally, players like to take these big hunts back home early for food.
That's a lot of food to work with, especially on a map that doesn't really have a lot of safe food to work with. Though Beast does have the berry spawn to the back, which is nice. But as you kind of highlighted, it gives you some flexibility. Knowing Beastie, I would be somewhat surprised if he used it as part of his army, though. He's just that macro-style player that just wants to lure it back home and get that food that he needs from it.
Indeed, indeed. My, oh my, we got a game, Lidicore. It's exciting.
We do.
Yep.
We certainly do. So I'm curious how things will work out here for Warrior, though, because in the previous game, it was basically one decisive engagement with essentially all the god power, all the favors being used up, and that just didn't work. That just didn't work his way. I'm wondering what the plan is going to be here to open things with. Let's take a look at the relics, though, because our observers definitely want to show that to us. I have the Orn loot nicely tucked away in the corner. What else do we have lying around? Oh, this one is a goodie. Train time villagers 5% lower, and there is one towards the right of Beast. I don't know if we've already taken a look.
We'll see how these classical ages come through. Again, we're not on that water map like we were last game, so behind the timings are going to be a lot tighter with the player build orders and stuff. So much more normal probably for them, as the majority of their games are probably been on land maps. As we see now, the age up coming through for Beastie. It's going to be Anubis. So Anubite's going to be an interesting way to apply pressure. They have their jump ability has been kind of changed in Retold. If you're familiar with it from Legacy, you can use it now. You can target the ground to jump around, so it can be very useful to hop over walls and stuff like that. Meanwhile, was that Freya on the right side there for Thor from Warrior?
Yep.
Nice. Nice. The Valkyrie, a great way to apply early pressure, but it's tricky to do a ton against Egypt early with the Valkyrie, so we'll see. Maybe there's a forest fire opening he can make.
I'm curious about Beastie, though, because one thing that I really like with the Anubis pick here is Plague of Serpents, which is, I feel like, such a cool tool in the arsenal of Beastie and the way he likes to play this. A more defensive playstyle and oftentimes, to an extent, undercommitting to army. And especially if Warrior is looking to make a timing push happen, tools like that could easily help Beasty hold these positions. But it looks like Beasty is going to just head out. Is that a second TC that he's planning? Oh, whoa, wait. Hello there, Mr. Oxcart. That was...
He's having a good time. Don't mind him.
Yes. Looks like for now it's just gonna be that one little expansion, but looks like he hasn't eaten the elephant yet, so maybe it's gonna be used for combat here as Beasty's heading all the way to the south to yoink that relic. That's the Axeman relic, I do believe.
Interesting. Yeah. Another choice there by Beasty is to use his early favor on another new bite. That's kind of spicy. Usually when you go for these Anubite builds, you want like 2 monuments early game, but only 1 for Beasty here. And here you can jump over the wall, uses the ability onto the wood line. These are great raiding units, but into the house they hop, or the outpost. And again, this wall isn't going to stop Beasty, especially the foundation. You can just run over it. You see another Anubite on the field. The Valkyrie, though, yeah, we talked about that at the start, right? The Valkyrie could just run into the Pharaoh. The Pharaoh's so good against defending against the Valkyrie early game. It's not quite like when you're playing against Greek, where you're forcing those heroes into uncomfortable positions. Like, the Pharaoh wants to be where your economy is, right?
Looks like it's gonna be quite an army-heavy composition here for both of these players here. This is not gonna be that slow build-up that we've seen in the previous game. It's going to be a lot more aggressive. It's multiple racks for Beasty, and he's been getting upgrades, and there it is, the Axeman. Now I feel like it's a little clearer as to why he went for that Axeman relic right at the very beginning. He's just going all in on the Axeman.
Yeah, also getting medium spear, so setting himself up for a lot of options, I think, which is going to be needed here. The throwing Axemen, though, from Norse are going to be quite solid in this position, especially with a... Was that Herdman queued up for a moment? Maybe that was a mistake and he realized and he canceled the Herdman. I was like, that is a weird choice. There's no cavalry for Egyptians.
I love the leap, though, just across the wall.
Yep. Yeah, super
well,
annoying.
So much for walling.
Right? Yeah, walling against jackals. The Anubites gonna be a tricky choice. And it's gonna pull those Hersier to the back. So instead of building or applying pressure, they're gonna be defending the base, running in circles, trying to defend against this.
This is so oppressive. Beasty, like, it's not like he's going to kill a lot of eco here, but he's just kind of dictating the tempo of the game. And look at all the reaction he's forcing out. All the Hersier are being pulled to the north, and you know what comes next. Beasty has been investing into Axemen for some time, so I would not be shocked to see him move in. This is not a fight he wants to take, though. The Anubites do get surrounded here, and Beasty is going to lose both.
Yeah, looks like he was busy dealing with the cavalry. The RC were on his economy, and he had to focus on that, and maybe lost track of the Anubites in the process. Not going to be a huge loss for him as he switches into the full classical army. Set is able to do this quite effectively, because Set has that aura around their monument, granting a 5% discount. And also, their Axemen and Spearmen and Slingers all move a little bit faster. And the Axemen going to be chasing down the throwing Axemen. This is a hard counter relationship, so they kind of both counter each other, but the throwing Axemen going to have the range. Not the mobility.
Yeah, a lot of them are just getting chased away here. More throwing Axemen on the way here for Warrior. Beasty is looking to make a push happen, though. He's got multiple elephants. We haven't talked about this, Winston. It's not just one elephant now. He's got 2 elephants, a rhino, and he's been committing very heavily into the Axemen, some Spearmen as well. He definitely has a lot of damage potential, and looks like these hunters are very much exposed on the right side as well. Beasty not looking to dive just yet, however.
Yeah, but this is going to be a really tricky hold here for Warrior. He does have a decent number of throwing Axemen, so with micro and time, he'll be okay, but none of his units are going to buy him any time. The Hersier frontline against Axemen is awful. The Hersier going to just get absolutely mopped instantly. The retreat has to come out from Warrior, meaning full retreat from the hunt. Plague of Serpents dropped as well, so the hunt completely abandoned here. Damage coming in all across the board. Beasty in a dominant position now in this game.
So much damage done over here. All the Hersier are gone, and Beasty is not stopping at this point. He can jump the Lumberjacks, and so he does. These guys are a little cornered in here as well. Looks like a second wave of cavalry does come in here, however, and, you know, Warrior is standing and fighting. This is his tournament life on the line, but Seer just get absolutely mauled by these Axemen here.
Yeah, once you get enough of a throwing Axeman mass, you can maybe start to take good fights, especially because there's a decent number of spearmen in the army for Beasty. And now kiting back these Plague of Serpents, Beasty might just be content with the damage he's dealt and consider a heroic age behind this. I'm not sure. Oh, it is. There it is. Sorry, I just missed it on the UI there. We do see Nephis coming in.
That's gonna be rough for Warrior to deal with. It's not like Beastie has a lot of favors right now. Serpents will be cleaned up after all, but Beastie is just pulling back his forces. Now, here's the thing. This at least bought some time here for Warrior to reassess things and build up the army. He has gotten a decent amount of throwing axemen out there. Now he's going heavy into cav. Whereas for Beastie, it looks like it's just going to be spears for the time being, so he is going to have that response to the cav immediately.
Wow, interesting. Even Necropolis coming in for Beastie. How many monuments does he have? Just the 2 right now, I'd assume. Maybe he's building a 3rd. We do see this movement. Necropolis being the upgrade that makes your monuments generate favor faster. And we do see this move to that gold. We've talked about this in multiple series, and it's going to be a big focus if you're not familiar with the game. Getting this fortress up on the 2nd gold is a core part of Egyptian strategy. They are more gold reliant than most other factions, although every faction is to a pretty large degree gold reliant, but the game just ends if you don't have gold. So this is a very common move. Beastie now just going to be holding here for the time being against a large classical army while his upgrades come in.
Beastie, 1 age up here. He needs his upgrades, though. It looks like Warrior will not be given a fight, though, and this is quite alarming for him, if you think about it. He kind of needs to make something happen before those upgrades come in, otherwise his position is just going to be so bad. In fact, when we look at the top bar real quick, one thing to highlight is that he's got absolutely no workers on food. There's nothing. He is not going to age 3 anytime soon.
It's queued up. It's because he's going gauge 3. He has Scotty.
I get baited. I keep getting baited about the small icons, but nevertheless, it's not like he's gonna have a massive food bank to work with, right?
Yeah, we'll see what that means when he does get to heroic. It looks like his Vils just got back on the hunt, and he's going to be trying to apply some pressure here, but this might be one of those classic mistakes. Applying pressure while you're aging, it's a tale as old as time in all Age of Empires and a lot of different stuff. Teching while applying pressure means your army is now out of position, and we do see some of these Scorpion men leading the charge. Some elephants in the rear, chariot archers coming in as well, and the hunt being pressured again, but that's not where Warrior is hunting.
But Warrior is nowhere to be found. His lumberjacks are more than exposed. Beastie hasn't used that opportunity just yet. Warrior has to pull back his army here. A lot of lumberjacks could be exposed. Warrior for now pulls all the eco.
Where is this? Oh, it's just on the hunt, and the gold Beastie found it with the priest. This is going to be an exceptional raid, and the frost comes out onto. Oh my gosh.
Still so much damage done to those workers out there. So many low HP ones. And, I mean, here comes the cav, but that's a lot of spearmen to work with. Beastie does get that jump. He does get that fight. And we haven't even talked about the zoo that's just marching across the base of Warrior here. So many workers are low HP and could be caught in the crossfire.
Right, it's an interesting play there. I'm not even sure. Like, it's tricky to say. Frost just cancels out the Ancestors, but it does save the Vils. So probably a very useful use of it. The Beastie just absolutely mopping up this fight here. The Frost Giant with no real support here. As all the units get mopped up, the Scorpion men have this ability now where they can deal poison damage in an AoE. You see that tail just kind of sting forward, and that injects units in an AoE around them. Just the army eviscerated, the economy.
Yeah, there's nowhere to go in here. There's nowhere to go. There is nowhere to hide. Warrior gave it a go. But Beastie, dominant in this series, you feel, both of these games. Things started out on the slower side, but then these 1 or 2 key decisive engagements, Beastie was always able to win those. And now things are looking almost impossible for Warrior. No army, eco getting banked up very badly, basically no favors to work with. This might be it.
I mean, this game is certainly over as Beastie just absolutely dominant performance here, showing the power of set quite nicely, playing that classical, or the classical set play, which we've seen quite a lot since Retold has come out. Using those bonuses to great effect, using some of the hunt in the army. And all that's left here is for Warrior to acknowledge defeat as his units and remaining economy get mopped up. Maybe he's holding on to a glimmer of hope.
It's an elimination match, right? So you gotta try to make anything happen, because if you tap out of this one, you're out of the tournament. But the damage feels insurmountable at this point. Down 21 workers. So many of the workers are very badly beaten up as well, so the next wave could easily start devastating this line of eco. And you have the chariot archers coming in, more scorpions as well. I don't know. I feel like there's just nowhere to go. Scorpion men, you have, most importantly, the chariots. Beasty has been using those to perfection the previous game, and I feel like that's going to be the case here as well. A lot of workers are heavily damaged. 32 workers right now for Warrior. It could turn into 15 in an instant.
Yeah, BC's advantage here is really extreme. And he does have ballistics from earlier. He got that right away in Classical, or sorry, at the start of Heroic. And so forced off the wood line. All these little dwarves have to run the other way now. He was feeling uncomfortable in the base for Warrior as the pressure rains down from the left side. The right side, though, once again open. BC might navigate around this time. And now we see the siege coming in. Double siege workshop production from him. So the pressure will be immense. The pressure will be immense, I say.
It is. It's going to be just tough to hold. It's throwing Axeman that's trying to be the response over here from Warrior. Beasty is slowly piling up the favors as well. It's going to have enough for Serpents very soon. But nevertheless, it's all about that population count that you see at the top. 133 against 66. That's just looking extremely grim for Warrior. But he's still on this. He's trying to cling on to his essentially last chance, his last hope in here. I just don't know where he can go with this game.
I mean, he's going to try to take like a really good defensive fight, but it's going to be really tricky. BC has all the time in the world. He can just take whatever fight he wants. If Warrior ever tries to poke out and take an engagement, he might just get shot in the face by all these chariots, and BC can kite him forever while he preps a proper response to whatever happens. And we're going to see a hill fort trying to go up here on the front. We'll see how long it stays up as the siege towers roll in on the side.
No, I don't think. Well, it's going to go up, but it's going to be taken out instantly here. There is the hill fort towers are now moving in. And that's just way too many chariot archers to deal with.
Whoa! And Garrison
Nice
on
little
the front.
jump. That's a nice body block, but how long can you hold that? That's the question. Scorpion men moving in, the siege towers moving in as well. Some cap make an appearance, but I feel like this death ball of chariot archers is just not something that Warrior has an answer to.
Warrior back against the wall here. The hill fort that he just invested in goes down nearly immediately. The siege towers rolling relatively uncontested. The dwarves on the main gold mine. The gold's about to run out of that dwarven mine, and the dwarves retreating now. Oh boy, this is looking difficult.
That's gotta be it. Beasty is just creeping up here with the towers, with the chariot archers. And this must be it, I presume? Did it freeze for you as well?
I am seeing a frozen screen indeed. Chat is as well.
Okay, yeah, I'm looking at the fire on the building, so it's not like internet crashing whatsoever. It's, I guess, game over? Something? Maybe? Or a
No,
DC.
game is
Oh, there we go. Okay, there we go. Saved.
The game is
Saved.
continuing.
Everybody hold the phone. Saved. Final hurrah here for Warrior here, looking to take out these siege towers. He's losing so much infrastructure behind this, but he's barely taking out anything from Beasty. A siege tower goes down, a second one might be taken out as well, but look at all the casualties that he needs to concede just to get rid of those initial siege towers. And there is 3 more to work with for Beasty.
I mean, I'm just looking at Warrior's macro right now. 0 on food, 0 on gold, and a dream. It's pretty tricky to make effective units without either of those resources, but we'll see how this pans out. The siege tower is continuing to ramp up. And the Axemen trying to take an engagement. They do have the Scotty upgrade. I'm blanking on the name here, but If I recall, that makes your units better against your throwing X-Men better against myth units. Right?
There we
Nope,
go.
adds more range now. Oops. Things are
There
changing.
we go. Beasty dominant in this series. Egyptians versus Norse twice in this series. Twice did Beasty win. He is the one to move on to a round of 64, whereas we're just going to have to say goodbye here to Warrior. I'm going to give him credit, though. He definitely had some good moments in this, but it's just, in general, a tough matchup, especially when you think about coming up against one of the more accomplished AoE 4 players. Well, one of the most accomplished AoE 4 players out there, but you could just say that, Beasty, in a way, at this point, he's just one of the more accomplished in general, RTS players playing in this tournament. It's always going to be a tough one, even if Beasty is a little inexperienced in this game. I don't know how much time he had to spend in this game, but some of the natural skills that he has from other RTS titles definitely translate into this game. So by no means was Warrior given an easy matchup here.
Yeah, I think to that as well, Winston. I think BC just show how much of a robust and well-rounded player he is, right? Like game one, I think he was more in a reactionary, almost defensive format because of the Norse aggression. Then that game two, it felt like he just gave no room to breathe whatever for Warrior.
Yeah, I think that early second Anubite was really solid. I've played against some players who are doing this Anubite build where you quickly go for two monuments and you can spam Anubites with your hunt as well, and it just applies so much pressure. It's really good against Greek who have trouble dealing with like raiding myth units in the early classical era because they only have two heroes to defend with, and it's just they can't be everywhere at once. But we'll see. I mean, really solid play, really solid builds, good intention and strategy there. I think BC showed a really solid understanding. I'd be excited to see if he could get pretty far in this qualifier. I think it's a tough road ahead. I think as you start getting into those top 10 players, top 20 players, the competition really starts to ramp up. But obviously, Beasty, one of the more well-known players in this tournament, going to be some interesting thoughts there to see how he does.